Hi! Welcome to this part of my review featuring the Runecairn Wardensaga role-playing game. If you haven't seen the other parts of my review, featuring this solo RPG, inspired in Dark Souls and the Norse sagas, and that you can also play as a co-op or even a competitive experience, as we will see in this part of the review, please check out the playlist in the description below. This time we are going to talk about the Delve generator, which contains a set of tables that I would consider advanced tables for the solo system. We are also going to talk about the co-op mode and the competitive mode or invasions. To use the Delve generator, you have to follow 7 steps. First, you roll a d6 on the locations table to determine the dungeon type and size. Dungeons vary in size, but all have at least 10 areas. Depending on the dungeon type, roll an extra die to determine how many total areas there are. You note your dungeon size. The second step is rolling a d6 on your location's objectives to determine the goal of the delve. Step 3 is rolling a d12 on the encounters table when entering a new area to determine what you see. Step 4 is, when first interacting with an NPC or monster, you roll 2 6-sided dice on the NPC reactions table for their initial reaction. If not immediately hostile, the non-player character may help or hinder your quest. In Step 5, for more dynamic combat, you roll 2 6-sided dice on the enemy actions table to determine the enemy's tactics. Some enemies fight to the death, such as undead or demons, but most flee if their lives are in legitimate danger, animals especially. You use your best judgment depending on the situation. In Step 6, for every area cleared, you subtract 1 from your dungeon size. When your dungeon size reaches 1, you roll a d6 on the resolution table to see how close you are to your objective. You'll either reach your objective, find a clue to its location, or encounter a setback that halts your progress. If you don't locate your objective, roll again on the encounters table. For every area you now clear, roll on the resolution table, adding a bonus for every clue or penalty for every setback. In Step 7, once you've located your objective, the real challenge begins. It's important to record your progress through the dungeon on the Delve generator sheet included in this game. It contains a space for a map and encounters. When it comes to objectives, you have a good variety of them. Completing an objective rewards you with 1 soul. So perhaps your objective is escort. You guide an individual to a particular location. Perhaps it's escape. You must successfully exit the location while avoiding any dangers. Perhaps it's hunt. Locate your target, pursue them through the dungeon, and successfully eliminate them or retrieve them. There are many more, such as slay, cleanse, infiltrate, explore. It depends on the location. The objectives are going to vary depending on the adventure site, if you are exploring a cairn, an outpost, ruins, a stronghold, etc. When it comes to encounters, maybe they are related to mysteries, perhaps they are mundane, or maybe they present an obstacle. When it comes to the reactions of non-player characters, perhaps the non-player character is talkative, or unfriendly, or perhaps even hostile. When it comes to enemy actions, and this is very useful and adds a bit of realism to combat, perhaps the enemy will attempt to disarm you, or attempts a wild attack on you, or tries to grab you, or carry out a feint. You have a handy flowchart in this section to understand the process of this delve generation system. So during your adventures, perhaps you hear the sound of manic laughter from behind you. Perhaps you encounter a grave sword driven deep into the stone ground. Maybe you encounter a flooded passage which slows movement. Maybe you encounter wolves, or perhaps a lone cloaked elf stalking the perimeter with swords drawn. The encounters are going to be very different, as mentioned earlier, depending on the outpost, the village, the cave that you are moving through. So this adds a lot of replayability, and they also serve as inspiration, even if after many days of playing, or perhaps weeks or months, you obtain the same result. You could tweak things a little bit, so that instead of encountering a roaring waterfall that rushes over a path and you need to make a strength save to cross the ford, maybe now it represents a raging wind. Or maybe instead of encountering a guard that laughs raucously and stumbles drunk, maybe now you encounter a prostitute that is looking for a client. Now let's talk about a couple of very interesting features of this role-playing game. First, we have cooperation. Those of you that have played Demon's Souls, Dark Souls, etc., you know that sometimes you can invite another player into your game, another player that has died. In Runecairn, you can encounter effigy stones. They are very rare and difficult to obtain, but once you have them, you can invite another player. This is very cool. Imagine you call your friend that is also playing Runecairn and you tell him, hey, I just found this stone, can you please help me with this mission, or let's take on this particular adventure. So it works similar to Dark Souls. You use this effigy stone to summon the other player and they will fight alongside you. If you die, both of you die at the same time, but if your partner dies, then you continue with the fight, just like in Dark Souls. But we also have invasions. Another player may invade your world as a black fetch. He's going to try to kill your character, and if you manage to repel the invader, you will obtain a soul as a reward, or an important item the adversary held in life, such as a weapon, a spell, or a relic. Now, there is flexibility as to how you handle things here. For example, in the case of cooperation, you could control both characters at the same time. Maybe the game master or warden introduces a non-player character and that non-player character dies. Later on, you encounter an effigy stone to summon that deceased non-player character, and now this perhaps legendary hero appears to help you once more, and you control both of them at the same time. The warden could also control the other character, but I think it's better if the player controls both, so that the warden or game master continues with his role as the opposition. And when it comes to the fetch, the black fetch, the game master or warden could play as this entity, attacking you with both the normal enemies and this black fetch. Perhaps a non-player character that you met before, perhaps even a former ally, is now being controlled by some sort of darkness. Just like in Dark Souls, when you fight those poor wretched spirits that lost hope when they were alive, and now you need to fight them as these hostile entities. Thank you for watching this part of the review. In the next part, I am going to talk about the included scenario without spoilers. I am also going to talk about the appendices, and I'm going to give you my final thoughts on this role-playing game. When it comes to the delve generation system, it's excellent. There are some solo role players out there that at times feel a bit lost because the system that they are using sometimes feels a bit too loose or without structure, and the delve generation system not only provides the structure for the entire adventure, it also contains those tables that I would consider more advanced elements for the solo gameplay of determining the actions of your enemy, the reactions of the non-player characters and such. So it's going to be very exciting, and I think there is a lot of replayability, as I mentioned earlier, because of all of the results depending on the environment of the place that you are moving through. And like I said, if you encounter perhaps the same result twice, you can always modify it thematically, so just change a few details here and there, perhaps using the solo oracle included in the previous section, and you will obtain a new adventure element from a previous one that you have already used, perhaps several times. Now, when it comes to the system of cooperation and invasions, it feels slightly half-baked because there are some things that are not explained or covered. For example, in the case of cooperation, yes, the other adventurer leaves the game when he dies or when you die, but what happens if you complete the adventure? The book also doesn't tell you if that adventurer is going to be rewarded for helping the other player. So you're going to have to come up with some solutions for that, because in Dark Souls, Demon Souls, etc., your humanity is restored when you help other players. So perhaps the reward could be one soul, or perhaps an item, weapon, spell, etc. And when it comes to invasions, the Black Fetch doesn't have any incentive to invading the game of his friend or rival. So maybe I want to invade the game of my good friend. Why would I want to ruin his experience, or perhaps even challenge him? Maybe he's a good sport and I decide to attack him and I even kill him, but there is no reward for me aside from the challenge. So I would recommend that the Black Fetch is also rewarded with a soul, a spell, a relic, etc. And I would also put some restrictions so that invasions do not happen all the time. Otherwise you're going to get a snowballing effect through which one player is constantly defeating the other player, becoming stronger and stronger until the other player doesn't stand a chance against the invading fetch. So I recommend that you flesh out these subsections of the game before employing them. Thank you for watching this part of the review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that have been supporting the channel by sending drive-thru RPG gift certificates. If anyone else wants to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.